Yao, 4 German shepherds, was left alone. Inside a broken bus, what baby did next left everyone in tears. The boy's tiny hands pressed against the rusted fence, rain mixing with tears on his 5-year-old face. What Ethan Miller did in the next 60 seconds would save 7 lives and expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power. But first, he had to convince his grandfather that the desperate barking from inside that abandoned bus wasn't just noise. It was a cry for help that only he could understand. Don't forget to like, share, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Thunder cracked across the sky, like God himself was angry at the small town of Millbrook. Ethan Miller walked alone from kindergarten, his Spider-Man backpack bouncing against his shoulders with each step. The other kids had parents picking them up, but Ethan's mother, Sarah, worked double shifts at the hospital ever since Dad died 3 months ago. 3 months, 2 days, and 14 hours, if anyone was counting. Ethan was counting. The rain started as a drizzle, then turned mean. Fat drops pelted his face as he turned down the shortcut past Henderson's junkyard. That's when he heard it, barking so desperate it cut through the storm like a knife through paper. "Help," Ethan whispered, though no one asked him what the barking meant. He just knew. The same way he knew when Dad's heart was giving up that night, even before the machines started screaming. The barking came from deeper in the junkyard, past the "keep out" signs and the chain-link fence topped with rust instead of barbed wire. An old school bus, the kind that used to be yellow but now looked like a sick banana, sat tilted against a pile of crushed cars. The windows were mostly broken. Water poured through them like tiny waterfalls. 4 massive shapes moved inside the bus. German shepherds, all of them, pressing their faces against the few intact windows. Their eyes weren't mean like junkyard dogs. They were scared, no, terrified. "I'm coming," Ethan said, dropping his backpack. His small fingers wrapped around the fence links. The metal was cold and bit into his skin, but he started climbing anyway. "Ethan Michael Miller, you get down from there right now." The voice belonged to Grandpa Frank, who must have been watching from their apartment window across the street. Frank moved fast for a man with a bad leg from Vietnam. His face was red, whether from anger or exertion. Ethan couldn't tell. "Grandpa, there's dogs. I don't care if there's elephants in there. You're coming home." Frank's hands were already reaching up to pull Ethan down, but then he stopped. Something in his grandson's eyes made him pause. It was the first time since the funeral that Ethan looked alive. Truly alive. "They're chained, Grandpa." Inside the bus. The water's coming in, and they're chained. Frank's jaw tightened. He looked through the fence at the bus, then at the storm clouds getting darker by the second. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry, don't tell your mother I said that. We have to help them. Ethan, those could be dangerous animals. Guard dogs, maybe. We should call—" "No!" The word exploded from Ethan with such force that Frank stepped back. "No police, no adults. They never help. They didn't help Dad. They won't help the dogs." Frank's eyes softened. His grandson hadn't strung together that many words since David's death. "Okay, buddy. Okay, let me think." The barking grew more frantic. One of the dogs, the biggest one, threw himself against the bus door. The chain around his neck went tight, yanking him back. Even from 50 feet away, Ethan could see the red marks where the chain had rubbed the fur away. "There's bolt cutters in my truck," Frank said finally, "but I'm not letting you go in there alone." "You'll come with me?" Frank looked at the fence, then at his grandson's face, the first hope he'd seen there in months. "Your mother's going to kill me, but yeah, I'll come with you." The bolt cutters made quick work of the fence. Frank went through first, his movements careful and military precise despite his limp. Ethan followed, his sneakers squelching in the mud. Up close, the bus looked even worse. Rust had eaten holes in the floor. Water pooled ankle-deep in the back. The biggest German shepherd, Rex, according to a faded tag on his collar, watched them approach. His bark changed from desperate to warning. The other 3 dogs pressed against the windows, their chains tangling as they moved. "Easy, boy," Frank said, but Rex's ears stayed flat against his head. Ethan stepped forward. He's not angry. He's protecting them. The boy pointed to the second largest dog, whose swollen belly was unmistakable even through matted fur. "She's going to have puppies." "How could you possibly know?" Frank started, then stopped. His grandson was already at the bus door. his small hand pressed against the glass. Rex had stopped barking, the massive dog's head tilted, studying the child. "My dad died," Ethan said to the dog, his voice steady and clear. "Bad things happened to him too. But my grandpa's here now. He knows about protecting people. He did it in the war." Frank's throat tightened. "Ethan, we need to be careful." But Rex had already moved back from the door, his tail giving a single cautious wag. The inside of the bus was a horror show. The 4 dogs were chained to the seat legs with padlocks that looked new, too new. Someone had put them here recently. Someone wanted them to die slowly. The pregnant female, Luna, her tag red, lay on her side, panting hard. Her eyes rolled with pain. The 3rd dog, Scout, had an infected wound on his shoulder that smelled like rotting meat. The youngest, Shadow, couldn't have been more than a year old. He pressed against Luna like he was trying to keep her warm. "Grandpa," Ethan's voice was small, "she's having her puppies. Right now." Frank looked. Closer, Luna's sides were contracting. Fluid pooled beneath her that wasn't from the rain. Oh hell no. We need..." "Mom," Ethan said. "We need Mom." Sarah Miller had seen a lot in her 12 years as an emergency room nurse, but nothing prepared her for the sight of her father-in-law and son inside a flooded bus with 4 chained German shepherds, one in active labor. "What the hell, Frank?" "Language," Ethan said automatically, then went back to stroking Scout's head. The injured dog had his massive head in the boy's lap, eyes closed as Ethan whispered something too quiet for the adults to hear. "Sarah, we need your help," Frank said. "These dogs, someone left them here to die." "And you thought breaking and entering was the solution?" But even as she spoke, Sarah was already moving toward Luna, her nurse instincts taking over. "How long has she been in labor?" "Maybe an hour," Frank said. "The chains, we need to get them off." Sarah examined the padlocks. "These are police grade. Frank, what have you gotten us into?" Rex suddenly stood, his massive frame tense. His nose pointed toward the entrance of the junkyard. A low growl rumbled from his chest. "Someone's coming," Ethan said with absolute certainty. "Rex says someone's coming." "Dogs don't talk, baby," Sarah said gently, but she was already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Marcus. We need his truck." Marcus Washington had served 2 tours in Iraq with Frank. When Frank called, Marcus came, no questions asked. That's how it worked with them. His pickup truck splashed through the junkyard entrance just as another set of headlights appeared on the main road, slowing down like they were looking for something. "In here!" Frank waved from the bus door. Marcus took in the scene, the chained dogs, Luna in labor, Scout barely conscious, and simply said, "What do you need?" "Transport. Now. All of them." "Frank, those chains..." "I know." Frank hefted the bolt cutters. "Start with Rex. He seems to be the alpha. If he trusts us, the others might follow." The sound of the bolt cutters on chain was the most beautiful thing Ethan had ever heard. Rex stood perfectly still as Frank worked, but his eyes never left the boy. When the chain fell away, Rex didn't run. Instead, he went straight to Luna, licking her face as she whimpered through another contraction. "Good boy," Ethan said. "See? We're helping." They worked fast. Shadow came free next, then Scout, though moving him made him cry out in pain that brought tears to Ethan's eyes. Luna was last and the most difficult. She snapped when Frank got close, protective of her coming puppies. "Let me," Ethan said. He crawled through the dirty water until he was face to face with the laboring dog. "Luna, we're taking you somewhere safe. Your babies will be okay, I promise." Sarah wanted to pull her son back, but something stopped her. The way Luna's eyes focused on Ethan, the way her breathing calmed, it was like they were having a conversation without words. The chain came free just as Luna's first puppy started to crown. "We need to move now," Sarah said. Getting 4 large dogs, one in active labor, from the bus to Marcus's truck should have been impossible. But Rex seemed to understand. He supported Luna on one side, while Shadow took the other. Frank and Marcus carried Scout between them, the dog's infected wound leaving bloody smears on their shirts. "The car's back," Ethan said, pointing to the road. A dark sedan with tinted windows had pulled up to the junkyard entrance. "They're looking for the dogs. How do you..." "Never mind." Frank slammed the truck gate closed. "Marcus, drive." Your place or ours? Mine's closer, but ours, Sarah said firmly. I have medical supplies there. The truck lurched forward just as two men got out of the sedan. One pointed at them, shouting something lost in the storm. Marcus didn't stop. Luna's first puppy was born in the back of the truck, with Ethan holding her head and Sarah working as midwife. The tiny creature wasn't breathing. No, 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 Sarah muttered, clearing the puppy's airway. Ethan placed his small hand on the puppy's chest. Come on, he whispered. Your mama fought so hard for you. You have to fight too. The puppy gasped, then cried, a thin, reedy sound that made Luna's tail thump weakly against the truck bed. How did you? Sarah started. Dad taught me, Ethan said simply. Before, when he was showing me about hearts and how they work. He said sometimes they just need someone to believe they can beat again. Sarah pulled her son close, rain and tears mixing on both their faces. By the time they reached the apartment, Luna had delivered 3 puppies. 3 more were coming. Scout was unconscious but breathing. Shadow hadn't left Luna's side, and Rex. Rex stood guard at the truck's gate, watching the road behind them like a sentinel. Those men, Frank said to Marcus as they carried Scout up the stairs. They'll come looking. Let them try, Marcus said. I didn't survive Fallujah to be scared of some dog thieves. But Ethan, helping carry the newborn puppies wrapped in his jacket, knew it was more than that. The feeling in his chest, the same feeling he'd had the night Dad died, told him this was just the beginning of something much bigger, much more dangerous. Inside the apartment, they spread blankets on the living room floor. Sarah had turned the space into a makeshift veterinary clinic, pulling supplies from the hospital that she'd borrowed over the years for various emergencies. Never had she imagined this. Luna was struggling with the 4th puppy. It was stuck, and she was getting weaker. We need a real vet, Sarah said. But even as she spoke, she was putting on gloves. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Please, Mom, Ethan said. He was sitting with Rex's massive head in his lap, and the dog was completely calm, trusting. They need us. Sarah looked at her son, really looked at him. Him. For 3 months, he'd been a ghost of himself, speaking in single words, eating only when forced, staring at nothing. Now his eyes were bright, focused, alive. Okay, she said. Okay, Frank, I need hot water. Marcus, see if you can find my suture kit. It's in the bathroom cabinet. Ethan. I'll keep them calm, the boy said, already moving between the dogs, touching each one, whispering words only they seemed to hear. The 4th puppy came out backward, which explained the difficulty. Sarah had to reach in and turn it, a procedure that made Luna cry out in pain that echoed through the apartment. Rex whined, started to move toward Luna, but Ethan placed a hand on his chest. She's strong, Ethan told the dog. Stronger than the bad people thought, just like you. Rex settled, but his eyes never left Luna. The puppy finally came free, but it was blue, not breathing. No, Ethan said firmly. He took the puppy from his mother's hands before she could object. The tiny body fit in his small palms perfectly. He breathed on its face, gentle puffs of air, while massaging its chest with his thumb. Ethan, honey, sometimes... No, his voice was fierce. Not this one. This one's special. I can feel it. 30 seconds passed. 40. Sarah was about to intervene when the puppy sneezed, then let out a cry so loud that Scout's eyes fluttered open. See? Ethan said, tears streaming down his face. I told you. Special Frank returned with hot water to find his grandson surrounded by dogs, a miracle worker in a Spider-Man t-shirt. How's Scout? Sarah moved to examine the injured dog. The wound was worse up close, deep, infected, possibly down to the bone. He needs antibiotics, real medical attention. This is beyond what I can. A knock at the door made everyone freeze. Rex was on his feet instantly, a growl building in his throat. Shadow joined him, the young dog's hackles raised. Sarah, it's Jenny from 3B. I heard noises. Is everything okay? Jenny Chen was a veterinary technician at the animal hospital downtown. Sarah had never been so relieved to hear someone's voice. Jenny, we need help. Please. The door opened to reveal a young woman in scrubs, clearly just off her shift. Her eyes went wide at the scene. 4 German shepherds, newborn puppies, blood and water everywhere. What the... Please, Sarah said. We found them. abandoned, chained in a bus, the ones badly injured, and Jenny was already moving, her professional instincts overriding her shock. "Scout first," she said, seeing the infected wound. "Then we check the puppies." Luna seems stable for now. She looked at Ethan, who was still holding the fourth puppy. "You did this? You saved them?" Ethan nodded, suddenly shy. "You're a hero, kid. A real hero." Jenny opened her bag, pulling out supplies. "I can stabilize them, but they need real treatment. My brother's a vet. He can—" "No authorities," Frank said quickly. "These dogs, there's something wrong here. Those chains were police grade. Someone wanted them dead." Jenny's hands paused in cleaning Scout's wound. "Police grade? I know what I saw. 20 years in the service, I know equipment." Jenny bit her lip, thinking. "There was a news story. 3 weeks ago, a K-9 officer died, James Torres. His dogs went missing the same night. The department said they ran away, but..." She looked at the 4 German shepherds. "These could be them." "Torres?" Marcus said slowly. "I heard about that. Suspicious circumstances, they said." "He was investigating something," Jenny continued, working on Scout as she talked. "My brother mentioned it. Something about drugs, corruption. Then suddenly he's dead, and his dogs are gone." Rex padded over to Ethan, his large body protective. The boy looked up at the adults, his face serious beyond his years. "Rex knows who killed his person," Ethan said quietly. "He saw it happen. All of them did." Sarah started to say something about imagination, but Frank held up a hand. "How do you know that, buddy?" Ethan touched Rex's head gently. "The way he stands, the way he watches. He's not just scared, he's angry. And he's waiting." "Waiting for what?" Jenny asked, though she directed the question at the dog, not the boy. "Justice," Ethan said simply. The room fell silent except for the tiny sounds of nursing puppies and the storm still raging outside. 5 adults, 4 dogs, and 1 small boy who seemed to understand more than he should. All of them now bound together by a secret that someone had tried to bury in a rusted bus. Scout whimpered as Jenny cleaned his wound, and Ethan moved to comfort him, whispering something that made the dog's tail wag weakly. Sarah watched her son, this child who'd barely spoken for 3 months, now moving between the dogs like he'd known them all his life. "The men in the sedan," Frank said suddenly, "they saw us. They know we have the dogs. Then we need to move them," Marcus said. "Where? And how? Luna just gave birth. Scout can barely walk." Rex suddenly stood, his body rigid. He moved to the window, a low growl building in his chest. Shadow joined him, both dogs focused on something outside. Ethan stood too, his small face pale. "They're here." Frank looked out carefully, staying to the side of the window. The dark sedan was parked across the street. 2 men stood beside it, one talking on a phone, the other watching their building. "Jenny," Frank said calmly, "how fast can your brother get here?" 20 minutes, maybe 15 if..." "Call him, tell him to bring everything. Tell him." Frank paused, his military mind calculating. "Tell him it's about Torres's dogs. If he knew Torres, he'll come." Jenny was already dialing. While she talked, Sarah gathered the puppies, placing them in a laundry basket lined with heating pads. Luna watched anxiously but seemed to trust the humans handling her babies. "Mom," Ethan said suddenly, "Rex wants to show us something." The big dog was pawing at his collar, Abel whining. Sarah examined it more closely. The leather was thick, expensive, not standard police issue, and there was something underneath, a small bump that shouldn't be there. "Frank, look at this." Frank's fingers found the bump immediately. "That's a tracking device, but not a normal one. This is..." His face went pale. "This is federal grade. DEA, maybe FBI." "Torres was working with the feds?" Marcus asked. "Or someone wanted to track these dogs very carefully?" Frank pulled out his pocket knife. "We need to remove it." "No," Ethan said quickly. "Rex says leave it. It's not just tracking. There's something else in there, something important." Before anyone could respond, Jenny's phone rang. "It's my brother. He's 5 minutes out, but..." Her face changed as she listened. Okay, we'll be ready." She hung up. "He says there's police cars heading this way. Lots of them. Someone called in a tip about stolen police dogs." "Those aren't cops in that sedan," Frank said grimly. No, but they called real cops. Smart. Force us out into the open. Luna struggled to her feet despite having just given birth, moving to stand with Rex and Shadow at the window. Even Scout tried to rise, though Ethan gently held him down. They want to protect us, the boy said. Even hurt, even tired, they want to protect us. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. These dogs, abused and abandoned, were still ready to defend strangers who'd shown them kindness. What do we do? Frank was already moving. Marcus, help me barricade the door. Sarah, get ready to move the dogs to the back bedroom if needed. Jenny. A new sound cut through his orders. Not sirens, barking. Deep, authoritative barking from Rex, who stood at the door like a guardian. The other dogs joined him, even Scout managing a weak bark from where he'd lay. They're warning someone off, Ethan said. Someone's in the hallway. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, stopped right outside their door. Then, a voice Sarah recognized with a chill. Mrs. Miller, this is Detective Carl Brennan. We've had a report about stolen police property. I need you to open this door. Rex's growl deepened, and suddenly Ethan understood why. Mom, he whispered, Rex knows that voice. He's one of them. One of the men who hurt Officer Torres. Sarah's blood went cold. She looked at Frank, who was already reaching for his phone to dial 911. But what could they say? That a 5-year-old boy could talk to dogs who witnessed a murder? Mrs. Miller, Brennan's voice came again, harder now. I have a warrant. Open the door, or we'll open it for you. Luna's 5th puppy chose that moment to arrive, the mother dog unable to hold back a cry of pain. The sound echoed through the apartment, unmistakably canine. That's all the confirmation I need, Brennan said. They heard him step back, preparing to break down the door. But then, new voices in the hallway, shouting, a scuffle. You don't have a warrant, Carl. A woman's voice, strong and official. And you're supposed to be on administrative leave pending investigation. Stay out of this, Chen. Can't do that. See, those are my partner's dogs in there, and I've been looking for them for 3 weeks. Ethan looked at Rex, whose tail had started wagging for the first time since they'd found him. He knows her, the boy said. She's good. She was Officer Torres's friend. Frank made a decision. He opened the door to reveal 2 police officers facing each other in the hallway. Brennan, a thick-set man with cold eyes, and Officer Lisa Chen, young but standing her ground. These people have stolen, Brennan started. These people rescued abandoned animals, Chen interrupted. She looked past Frank to where Rex stood, and her face crumpled with emotion. Rex? Oh my God, Rex, is that really you? The German Shepherd whined, his whole body wiggling with recognition. That's evidence in an ongoing... Brennan moved toward the door, but Rex's growl stopped him cold. The dog's lips pulled back, showing teeth, his body positioned to attack. Interesting, Chen said slowly. Rex never growled at cops before, only at suspects, only at threats. Brennan's hand moved toward his weapon. That dog is dangerous. That dog is trained to identify criminals, Chen shot back. She pulled out her phone, already recording. And he seems to have identified you. More footsteps on the stairs. Jenny's brother appeared with 2 veterinary assistants, all carrying medical supplies. Behind them, 2 more uniformed officers, real ones, with badge numbers visible and body cameras on. What's the situation, Chen? One of them asked. Detective Brennan is interfering with a rescue operation, she said calmly, and threatening K-9 units who may be witnesses to a federal crime. Federal? Brennan's face had gone pale. Oh, didn't you know? Chen smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Torres was working with the DEA. These dogs are federal witnesses, and you just threatened them on camera. Brennan backed away, his eyes calculating. This isn't over. No, Chen agreed. It's just beginning. As Brennan retreated down the stairs, Chen turned to the family clustered in the doorway. I'm sorry about him. Are the dogs okay? Are you okay? Luna's having puppies, Ethan said, surprising everyone by speaking directly to the stranger. 5 so far. Maybe more coming, and Scout's hurt bad. Someone did mean things to him. Chen's eyes softened. You saved them? We all did, Ethan said, then added quietly. They have something important to tell you. About what happened to Officer Torres, but you have to listen really carefully. Chen knelt down to Ethan's level. I'm very good at listening. Rex padded over and placed his massive head against Chen's shoulder. She wrapped her arms around him, and for a moment, the tough police officer just cried into his fur. "I thought I'd lost you all," she whispered. "James would be so grateful you're safe." "He's not safe yet," Ethan said seriously. "The bad men are still out there. And they'll come back." Chen looked at the boy, then at Frank, who nodded grimly. "Then we'd better get them somewhere secure." Dr. Nathan Chen, Jenny's brother, worked with quiet efficiency, treating Scout's wound while his assistants helped Luna with the last 2 puppies. 7 in total, all miraculously healthy, despite the circumstances. "These dogs have been through hell," he said quietly to Sarah as he worked. "Malnourishment, abuse, that wound on Scout is from a knife, not an accident." "Who would do this to police dogs?" Sarah asked. "Someone who wanted them silent," Officer Chen said from where she sat with Rex. "Torres was close to exposing something big. A drug ring involving—" She paused, looking at Ethan. "Involving people who were supposed to be good guys." "Cops," Frank said bluntly. "Corrupt cops." Chen nodded. "Torres had evidence? Hidden somewhere. He told me he had insurance, but he died before he could tell me where." Rex suddenly stood, moving to where Ethan sat with the newborn puppies. The big dog nosed at his collar again, whining. "There," Ethan said with certainty. "The important thing is in there." Dr. Nathan examined the collar carefully. "There's definitely something embedded here, not just a tracker, something else." He looked at Chen. "We need to x-ray this." "Can we do it without removing the collar?" Chen asked. "If this is evidence—" "I have a portable unit in my van. Give me 10 minutes. While they waited, Chen told them about James Torres, a good cop, a good man, a single father, raising a son not much older than Ethan. "Miguel's in foster care now," she said sadly. "No other family? He asks about the dogs every time I visit." "He could visit them," Ethan said suddenly, "when they're better. Rex would like that." Chen smiled sadly. "That's sweet, kid, but these dogs will probably need to go into protective—" "No," Ethan's voice was firm. "They stay with us." "Honey," Sarah started, "we can't keep 4 dogs and 7 puppies. We can barely—" "They chose us," Ethan interrupted. "We found them for a reason. Dad would understand." The mention of David made Sarah's breath catch. Frank placed a hand on her shoulder. "The boy's right. Sometimes things happen for a reason." The X-ray revealed what Rex had been trying to show them. Inside his collar, sewn into the leather, was a small data storage device. Military grade, waterproof, encrypted. "That's it," Chen breathed. "That's Torres's insurance. Whatever got him killed is on that device." "So, what do we do with it?" Marcus asked. "We need someone we can trust. Someone not connected to the local department." Chen thought for a moment. "There's an FBI agent Torres was in contact with. Special Agent Rivera. She's clean. I'm sure of it." "Make the call," Frank said. "But not from here. They might be monitoring." A sound from outside made them all freeze. Not sirens this time. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Moving fast. Shadow was at the window, barking frantically. Rex joined him, both dogs agitated in a way that made everyone nervous. Chen looked out carefully. 3 black SUVs. That's not local police. Brennan called for backup, Frank said grimly. His real backup. "We need to move. Now." Dr. Nathan was already packing his supplies. "I know a place. A farm, about an hour north. It belongs to a client who owes me favors. Big favors." "Can we move Luna?" Sarah asked. "She just gave birth." "We don't have a choice," Chen said. The SUVs had stopped. Men in dark clothing were getting out. Not uniforms, but something that suggested authority without actually claiming it. "Those aren't cops. Those are Brennan's cleanup crew. They move fast." Marcus and Frank carried Scout on a makeshift stretcher. Sarah held the basket of puppies while Luna followed, weak but determined. Rex and Shadow flanked them, protective. Jenny and her brother led the way to his veterinary van, large enough for all of them. They were halfway down the back stairs when they heard the front door of the building crash open. "Move! Move! Move!" Frank hissed, his military training taking over. They made it to the van just as shouts erupted from the building. Chen stayed visible, her uniform a deterrent, her hand on her weapon. "Drive," she told Dr. Nathan. "I'll follow in my patrol car." If they want to chase us, they'll have to do it in full view of my dash cam. As the van pulled away, Ethan looked back to see men flooding out of their apartment building. One of them, Brennan, stood on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, his face twisted with rage. "He's calling more people," Ethan said quietly. "Rex says he's going to call everyone." "How many is everyone?" Frank asked, though he was no longer questioning how Ethan knew these things. The boy looked at Rex, then back at his grandfather. "All of them, all the bad cops, they're all coming." The van drove through the rain-soaked streets, Doctor, Nathan taking seemingly random turns to make sure they weren't followed. In the back, Luna nursed her puppies, while Scout's breathing grew more labored, despite the antibiotics Nathan had administered. "He needs surgery," Nathan said quietly to Sarah. "Soon, or we'll lose him." Ethan moved to Scout's side, placing his small hands on the dog's head. "Not yet," he whispered. "You have to tell them what you saw first. You have to help catch the bad men, then you can rest." Scout's eyes opened, focusing on the boy with an intensity that made everyone in the van fall silent. "What's he showing you?" Chen asked from the front seat, no longer skeptical of Ethan's gift. "A warehouse," Ethan said slowly, his eyes distant as if seeing something none of them could. Red doors, the smell of chemicals. Officer Torres went there alone. He was taking pictures when... The boy's face scrunched in pain. When they heard him, Brennan was there, and others, 3 others in police uniforms. Chen was already on her. Phone, calling it in on a secure line. "I need Agent Rivera. Tell her it's about the Torres case. Tell her we have the dogs and the evidence." The farm appeared through the rain like something from a dream. Rolling hills, a large barn, a farmhouse with warm lights glowing in the windows. Dr. Nathan's client, an elderly woman named Ruth, asked no questions, simply opened her barn and helped them get the dogs inside. "You're safe here," she said, looking at Ethan with knowing eyes. "This place has sheltered many who needed it over the years." They set up a makeshift veterinary station in the barn. Dr. Nathan prepped Scout for emergency surgery, while Sarah monitored Luna and the puppies. Rex and Shadow patrolled the perimeter, their training taking over even in this new environment. Chen's phone rang. "Rivera's 20 minutes out with a federal team. She says to secure the evidence and keep the dogs safe." "The device is still in Rex's collar," Frank said. "Should we remove it?" "No," Ethan said suddenly. "Rex says wait, there's something else, something they don't know about." Before anyone could ask what he meant, headlights swept across the barn windows. Not one car, many. "That's not Rivera," Chen said, checking her weapon. "She wouldn't come in hot like that." Rex and Shadow were already at the barn door, growling. Luna struggled to her feet, placing herself between the humans and the door, despite having given birth just hours ago. "They found us," Frank said grimly. "How?" Ethan looked at Rex, his face pale. "The collar. There's 2 things in it. The evidence thing and another tracker. A secret one only the bad cops know about. We need to remove it now." "No time!" Chen was watching through a crack in the door. 8 men, armed, Brennan's leading them. "This is private property," Ruth said indignantly. "They can't just..." The barn door exploded inward. Brennan stood there, no longer pretending to be anything other than what he was, a criminal with a badge. "Give me the dogs," he said simply. "All of them, and we all walk away." "You killed Torres," Chen said, her weapon drawn but pointed down, knowing she was outnumbered. "Torres killed himself when he stuck his nose where it didn't belong." Brennan's eyes were cold. "Just like you're doing now." Rex stepped forward, his massive frame between Brennan and the others. The growl that came from his chest was primal, threatening. Shadow joined him, then even Scout, barely able to stand after surgery, but still trying to protect his pack. "You gonna shoot federal witnesses?" Chen asked. "In front of all these people? What witnesses?" "I see dangerous animals that need to be put down." Brennan raised his weapon, aiming at Rex. "No!" Ethan broke free from his mother's grip, throwing himself in front of Rex. "You can't hurt them anymore." "Get the kid out of the way," Brennan ordered, but none of his men moved. Something about a small boy protecting a dog made even hardened criminals pause. "Ethan, come back here," Sarah pleaded, but Ethan stood firm, his small hand on Rex's head. "Tell them, Rex. Show everyone what you saw." Rex barked once, twice, 3 times. A specific pattern. Chen's eyes widened. That's the emergency code. The officer down bark pattern Torres taught him. Shut that dog up, Brennan snarled. Rex barked again, the same pattern. Shadow joined him. Even Scout managed weak barks from where he lay. Luna, protecting her puppies, added her voice. They're testifying, Ethan said, tears streaming down his face. They're telling everyone what you did. The sound of sirens in the distance made Brennan's men shift nervously. But these weren't normal sirens. They were coming from everywhere, surrounding the farm. You called them, Brennan said to Chen. No, a new voice said from behind Brennan's group. I did. Special Agent Rivera stood in the doorway, backed by a full FBI tactical team. Detective Brennan, you're under arrest for the murder of Officer James Torres, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and about 15 other charges we'll discuss downtown. Brennan spun, his weapon rising, but Rex was faster. The German Shepherd launched himself at the corrupt detective, 90 pounds of trained muscle and fury. Brennan went down hard, his weapon flying from his hand. Good boy. Torres would have said that, Ethan thought, as Rex held Brennan down until the FBI agents could cuff him. The other corrupt officers surrendered quickly, surrounded and outnumbered. As they were led away, Rivera approached the group huddled in the barn. You're the Miller family? She asked. The ones who saved the dogs? Ethan saved them, Sarah said, pulling her son close. We just helped. Rivera knelt down to Ethan's level. You know what you did tonight? You helped solve a federal case. You're a hero. I'm not a hero, Ethan said quietly. The dogs are heroes. They remembered everything even when it hurt. They stayed brave even when they were scared. Sounds like someone else I see, Frank said, ruffling his grandson's hair. Dr. Nathan emerged from treating Scout. He's stable. He'll make it. They all will. As if understanding, Rex padded over to Ethan and lay down beside him, his large body protective and warm. Shadow joined them, then Luna with one of her puppies in her mouth, placing it gently in Ethan's lap. I think they've chosen their family, Rivera said with a smile. The question is, will you keep them? Sarah looked at the dogs, at her son's face, truly alive for the first time in months, and at Frank, who was already planning where to build a bigger doghouse in their tiny yard. How could we not? She said. They're family now. But Ethan was looking at Officer Chen, who was on her phone looking worried. What's wrong? It's Miguel, she said. Torres's son, his foster family. They can't keep him anymore. He'll have to move to another home, another school. He's already been through so much. Ethan stood up, still holding Luna's puppy, and walked over to his mother. Mom, remember when Dad said our family wasn't complete? That something was missing? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. David had said that, just weeks before his death, talking about maybe adopting another child. Miguel needs a family, Ethan said simply, and Rex needs his boy. As if understanding, Rex stood and walked to Chen, whining softly. That's a big decision, honey, Sarah said, but she was already looking at Frank, seeing the same thought in his eyes. We have room, Frank said quietly. David would have wanted, he would have understood. The boys could share Ethan's room, Sarah said slowly, thinking out loud. And God knows we'll need help with all these dogs. Rivera smiled. I could put in a word with child services. Hero family saves hero dogs and takes in hero cop's son. It would sail through approval. Can we meet him first? Ethan asked. Tomorrow? Rex really wants to see him. Chen wiped tears from her eyes. I'll arrange it. As the FBI team processed the scene and the corrupt officers were driven away, the Miller family sat in the barn with their new pack. 7 puppies squeaked and nursed while Luna rested. Scout slept peacefully, his wound properly treated at last. Shadow curled up against Frank's leg, finally feeling safe, and Rex sat with Ethan, the boy's small arms wrapped around the dog's neck, both of them looking out at the clearing night sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. Dad would be proud, Ethan whispered. Rex licked his face once, gently, and Ethan knew, somehow he just knew, that somewhere David was watching. And yes, he was proud. The morning sun broke through the barn windows, painting golden stripes across the hay where Ethan had fallen asleep against Rex's warm fur. Sarah found them there, the boy's hand still clutching the dog's collar, both breathing in perfect rhythm. The puppies were stirring, making tiny sounds that would soon become demanding barks for breakfast. "Time to wake up, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, but it was Rex who moved first, carefully extracting himself without disturbing the child. The dog looked at Sarah with those intelligent eyes, then gently nosed Ethan awake. "Is it time to meet Miguel?" were the first words out of Ethan's mouth. Officer Chen had arranged for them to meet Torres' son at a neutral location, a park where the boy often went to remember his father. The drive there was quiet, each of them lost in thoughts about how much their lives had changed in just 24 hours. Frank drove while Sarah sat in the back with Ethan and Rex. The other dogs stayed at the farm with Doctor. Nathan, Scout still too weak to travel, and Luna needing to nurse her puppies. "What if he doesn't like me?" Ethan asked suddenly. "Impossible," Frank said from the driver's seat. "You saved his dad's dogs. You're already his hero." But when they arrived at the park, the boy sitting alone on the bench didn't look like someone waiting for heroes. Miguel Torres was 7, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into himself. His foster parents stood at a distance, clearly ready to be done with their responsibility. Rex saw him first. The German Shepherd's whole body went rigid, then began trembling with excitement. A whine built in his throat, high and desperate. "Go on," Ethan said, and Rex needed no more permission. The dog bounded across the park, a black and tan blur of joy. Miguel looked up at the sound of paws on grass, and his face, the transformation was instant, from despair to disbelief, to pure, overwhelming joy. "Rex!" Miguel's voice cracked. "Rex!" Boy and dog collided in the middle of the park, Miguel falling to his knees as Rex covered his face with kisses, both of them crying in their own way. Miguel buried his face in Rex's fur, his shoulders shaking with sobs that had been held back for 3 weeks. "You came back," Miguel kept saying. "You came back to me." Ethan approached slowly, giving them their moment. When Miguel finally looked up, his face was streaked with tears and dirt from Rex's paws. "You saved them?" Miguel asked. "We all did," Ethan said. "But Rex saved us too. He showed us what happened to your dad. He helped catch the bad people." Miguel's face darkened. "Brennan? In jail. Forever, probably. Good." The word was fierce for a 7-year-old. Then, softer. "Where are the others? Luna, Scout, Shadow." "Safe. Luna had puppies, 7 of them. Scout got hurt, but he's getting better. Shadow's okay, just scared still." Miguel nodded, processing this. Then he looked at Sarah and Frank. "You're the ones who found them?" "Ethan found them," Sarah said gently. "He heard them when no one else did." Miguel studied Ethan with eyes too old for his age. "My dad said some people can hear what animals are really saying. He said it was a gift." "Your dad sounds smart," Ethan said. "He was." Miguel's voice broke again. He turned back to Rex, running his hands through the dog's fur like he was making sure he was real. "I thought I lost everything." "Not everything," Frank said gruffly. "Not anymore." Chen approached then, having given them space for the reunion. "Miguel, the Millers have something to ask you." Sarah knelt down to Miguel's level. "We know you've been through so much, too much, and we know no one can replace your dad. But we have a big house that feels empty, and 4 dogs who need lots of help, and 7 puppies who need training, and we'd like you to come live with us, if you want." Miguel's eyes went wide. He looked at Rex, as if asking the dog's opinion. Rex's tail wagged so hard his whole body moved. "All of us?" Miguel asked. "Me and Rex and everyone?" "All of you," Sarah confirmed. "We're kind of a package deal now." Miguel looked at Ethan. "You'd be my brother?" Ethan nodded solemnly. "If you want. I've never had a brother before, but I think I'd be good at it." For the first time since his father's death, Miguel smiled, really smiled. "Rex likes you. If Rex likes you, you must be okay." "Is that a yes?" Frank asked. Miguel stood up, Rex immediately pressing against his side. "My dad used to say that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everything falls apart." "Smart man," Frank said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yeah," Miguel said. "He was. The foster parents seemed relieved to hand over Miguel's things. One suitcase and a backpack, the sum total of a life disrupted. As they loaded into the car, Rex refused to let Miguel out of his sight, practically sitting on the boy's lap despite his size. "We need to stop somewhere first," Chen said. "Agent Rivera wants to meet with all of you. There's something about the device in Rex's collar." The FBI field office was a gleaming building of glass and steel, intimidating in its officialness. But Rivera met them in a comfortable conference room, not an interrogation room, and her smile was warm. "The data on the device," she said without preamble. "It's more than we hoped for. Torres documented everything, every meeting, every payoff, every drug shipment. Brennan was just middle management. This goes all the way to the top." "How high?" Frank asked. "City commissioner, 2 judges, the deputy chief of police." Rivera shook her head. Torres was building a federal case. He knew he was in danger, that's why he hid the evidence with Rex. "He trusted Rex more than people," Miguel said quietly. "He always said Rex would never betray him." "He was right," Rivera said. "Your father was a hero, Miguel. And because of what he documented, we're going to clean up this entire city." "But there's more," Chen added. "The warehouse Ethan described, the one Scout showed him, we found it. It's the main distribution center. We're raiding it tonight." "Scout saw it all," Ethan said. "That's where they hurt him. He tried to protect Officer Torres." Miguel's hands clenched into fists. "I want to help." "You already have," Rivera said gently. "But there is something you can do. The department wants to hold a memorial for your father, a real one, with full honors. They want you to be there, with the dogs." "All of them?" "All of them. They want to show that Torres's K9 unit survived, that his legacy lives on." Miguel looked at Rex, then at his new family. "Okay, but they come too, my new family." Rivera smiled. "Of course." On the drive back to the farm, Miguel finally asked the question Ethan had been waiting for. "How did you really find them?" Chen said. "You heard them, but the junkyard's far from your apartment." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I just know things, like I knew my dad was sick before the doctors did. I can feel what animals feel, kind of. My mom says it's imagination, but it's not," Miguel said firmly. "My dad could do it too, a little. That's why he was so good with the K9 unit. He said some people are just connected to animals differently. Your dad sounds like he was really cool." "He was." Miguel's voice was sad, but not broken. "He would have liked you. He always said the best people are the ones who listen with their hearts, not just their ears." Back at the farm, they found chaos. Luna's puppies had discovered their voices and were using them enthusiastically. Shadow had knocked over a bucket of water, trying to help Doctor. Nathan and Scout, despite being supposed to rest, had managed to drag himself to the barn door to stand guard. "Scout!" Miguel rushed to the injured dog, who immediately tried to lick his face despite the cone around his neck. "Oh, buddy, what did they do to you?" "He's going to be okay, Doctor," Nathan assured him. "He's tough. Wouldn't stay down even when he should." "That's Scout," Miguel said, gently stroking the dog's head. "Dad always said he was too brave for his own good." As Miguel reunited with each dog, telling them how much he'd missed them, Ethan noticed something. The dogs were different around Miguel, still loving, but more disciplined. They responded to subtle hand signals, following commands Ethan didn't even see Miguel give. "Can you teach me?" Ethan asked. "The signals?" Miguel looked surprised. "You want to learn? We're brothers now, right? Brothers share stuff." Miguel's smile was answer enough. They spent the afternoon in the barn, Miguel teaching Ethan the basic K9 commands, while Sarah and Frank worked with Ruth to figure out sleeping arrangements. The farmhouse was big, but not that big. In the end, they decided the boys would share the guest room, the dogs would have the enclosed porch, and the puppies would stay in the kitchen until they were older. "It's temporary," Ruth said, though her smile suggested she didn't mind the invasion. "Until you figure out something permanent." "About that," Frank said. "Sarah, we need to talk about the house." Sarah knew what he meant. Their apartment was too small for this expanded family. But David's life insurance was meant for Ethan's college, not a new house. "We'll figure it out," she said, watching the boys work with the dogs. "We always do." That evening, as they prepared dinner together, a chaotic affair with 2 boys, 4 adults, 4 dogs, and 7 puppies, Ethan's phone rang. It was Jenny, the veterinary technician who'd helped them that first night. "Turn on the news," she said urgently. "Channel 7, now." Frank found the remote and switched on the old TV in Ruth's kitchen, the screen filled with breaking news footage of a massive police operation. FBI agents in tactical gear were surrounding a warehouse, the one with red doors that Scout had shown Ethan. Federal agents have raided what appears to be the largest drug distribution center in the state, the reporter was saying. Sources say this raid is connected to the murder of Officer James Torres 3 weeks ago, and the arrest yesterday of Detective Carl Brennan, and several other officers. The screen cut to footage of suspects being led out in handcuffs. Ethan recognized some of the faces, men who'd been at their apartment building, who'd threatened them. "That's them," he said quietly. "Scout, look, those are the men who hurt you." Scout, who'd been lying on his bed, lifted his head to look at the TV. A low growl rumbled in his chest, but Miguel placed a calming hand on him. "It's over, boy. They can't hurt anyone anymore." The reporter continued. In a shocking twist, the evidence that broke this case came from an unlikely source, Torres's K9 unit, who were found abandoned but alive, carrying crucial evidence that Torres had hidden before his death. "They're not mentioning us," Sarah said, relieved. "Good. The last thing we need is attention." But Rivera had warned them this was just the beginning. The memorial service was in 3 days, and the media would be there in force. The story of the orphan boy reunited with his father's dogs was too powerful to ignore. "We should prepare Miguel," Frank said quietly. But Miguel was already ahead of them. "I know people will want to talk to me. Dad taught me how to handle media. Stay calm, stay on message, don't let them make you emotional." "You're 7, Sarah said gently. "You shouldn't have to know that." "Cops' kids grow up different," Miguel said matter-of-factly. "Dad made sure I was ready for anything." That night, after the boys were in bed, Ethan and Miguel talking quietly in the dark with Rex lying between their beds, the adults gathered in Ruth's kitchen. "This is going to get complicated," Chen said. She'd stop by to check on them and deliver some of Miguel's father's belongings that had been in evidence. The trial, the media attention, the department wanting to use the dogs for PR. "Those dogs have been through enough," Frank said firmly. "They're not props." "I agree. But the department sees them as symbols, Torres's legacy. They'll want them back eventually." "Over my dead body," Sarah said with a fierceness that surprised everyone, including herself. "Those dogs chose us. Miguel chose us. We're not splitting them up." "The department might not give you a choice," Chen warned. "Technically, they're police property." "Then we'll fight it," Frank said. "I didn't survive 2 tours in Vietnam to be pushed around by bureaucrats." Ruth, who'd been quiet, finally spoke. "I might be able to help with that. My late husband was a lawyer, specialized in animal law. I still have contacts. If the dogs are considered witnesses in a federal case, there might be provisions for protective custody." "You do that for us?" Sarah asked. Ruth smiled. "I've been alone on this farm for 3 years since Harold died. This week has been more excitement than I've had in all that time. Besides, those boys need those dogs, and those dogs need those boys. Anyone can see that." A sound from upstairs made them all freeze. Footsteps, too heavy to be the children. Frank was already moving, grabbing a baseball bat Ruth kept by the door, but it was Rex who appeared at the top of the stairs, followed by Miguel in his pajamas. "Sorry," Miguel said. "Rex heard something outside. He wanted to check." "What kind of something?" Chen asked, her hand moving to her service weapon. Rex was already at the window, his body tense. Shadow appeared from the porch, joining him. Both dogs were focused on something in the darkness beyond the porch light. "Someone's out there," Miguel said with certainty. "Rex and Shadow are in protection mode." Chen called for backup, while Frank and Marcus, who'd been sleeping in his truck to provide extra security, went to check the perimeter. They found tire tracks at the edge of the property, fresh ones, and cigarette butts still warm. "Someone was watching," Frank reported. "Recently left. Brennan's not working alone," Chen said. "He had partners we haven't identified yet." "Then we're not safe here," Sarah said, pulling the boys closer. "You're safer here than anywhere else," Rivera's voice came from the doorway. She'd arrived with a small FBI team. "We've been monitoring chatter. Some of Brennan's associates are still out there, but they are more concerned with saving themselves than revenge. This was probably just reconnaissance. Probably? Sarah's voice was sharp. I'm posting agents on the property, Rivera said. Until after the memorial service and the grand jury hearing. You're key witnesses now. All of you. Even the dogs, Ethan asked. Especially the dogs. There's talk of having Rex demonstrate his training at the trial, show how he identified Brennan as a threat. Rex, hearing his name, padded over to Rivera, sniffing her carefully before sitting at attention. Show her, Miguel, Ethan said. Show her what Rex can do. Miguel stood, suddenly looking older than his 7 years. He gave a series of hand signals, and Rex responded instantly, alerting to a scent, indicating a direction, even demonstrating the specific bark pattern that meant officer in distress. Remarkable, Rivera said. Torres trained him well. They trained each other, Miguel corrected. Dad always said it was a partnership. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. The boys worked with the dogs, getting them ready for the public appearance. Sarah managed medications and puppy care. Frank and Marcus coordinated security with the FBI. And Ruth, true to her word, had her lawyer contacts working on custody arrangements for the dogs. The morning of the memorial service dawned gray and drizzly, matching the somber mood. Miguel stood in front of the mirror in his new black suit. Sarah had insisted on buying him proper clothes, looking lost. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted to Ethan. You don't have to do it alone, Ethan said. We'll all be there. And Rex will be right beside you. Dad should be there, Miguel's voice broke. He should be the one getting the honors, not a folded flag and speeches from people who let him die. Ethan didn't have words for that kind of pain, so he did what his dad would have done. He hugged Miguel tight and let him cry. The service was held at the police memorial park, hundreds of officers in dress uniforms standing at attention. Media lined the barriers, cameras rolling. The chief of police, newly appointed after the previous one's arrest, spoke about Torres's bravery and sacrifice. But it was Miguel who stole the show. When called to receive his father's posthumous Medal of Valor, he walked to the podium with Rex at his side. The big German shepherd wore his official K9 vest, sitting at perfect attention while Miguel spoke. My dad wasn't just brave because he died, Miguel said, his young voice carrying across the silent crowd. He was brave because he stood up to bad people, even when those bad people were supposed to be good guys. He knew it was dangerous. He did it anyway, because that's what heroes do. They protect people who can't protect themselves. He looked down at Rex, then at Scout, Luna, and Shadow, who sat with Ethan and the family in the front row. These dogs were his partners. They saw what happened to him. They carried his evidence when no one else could be trusted. They survived when bad people tried to silence them. They're heroes, too. The crowd erupted in applause, but Miguel wasn't done. But the real heroes are the people who saved them. The Miller family heard them when they were dying and chose to help. They didn't know about the evidence or the case. They just knew animals were suffering and needed help. That's the kind of people my dad would want me to be with. That's why I'm proud to call them my family now. The cameras went crazy, reporters shouting questions. But Chen and Rivera formed a protective barrier, getting the family to their vehicles. As they drove away, Ethan saw the headlines already forming on phones and tablets. Hero cop's son finds new family with K9 rescuers. You did good, Miguel, Frank said gruffly. Your dad would be proud. I know, Miguel said quietly, his hand buried in Rex's fur. I could feel him there. Is that weird? No, Ethan said. I feel my dad sometimes too, especially when I'm doing something he would have liked. That evening, back at the farm, they found unexpected visitors. 3 families had driven out from the city, each wanting to adopt one of Luna's puppies. We saw the story on the news, one woman explained, about the hero dogs and their puppies. We want to give them good homes. Sarah was about to politely defer. They hadn't even thought about adoptions yet, when Ethan spoke up. They have to pass the test first. What test? The woman asked. Ethan looked at Miguel, who nodded. Together, the boys had each family sit quietly while they brought out the puppies one at a time. They watched how the people reacted, how the puppies responded, whether there was a connection. That one, Ethan said, pointing to a couple whose young daughter was gently stroking the smallest puppy. They match. How do you know? Sarah asked. Same way I knew Miguel was our brother before we asked him, Ethan said simply. You just know when things fit. By the end of the evening, 3 puppies had found homes, with promises to stay in touch and bring them for visits. The families left contact information and agreed to wait until the puppies were properly weaned. 4 puppies left, Frank said, doing the math. That's still a lot of dog. We'll manage, Sarah said, watching the boys teach Shadow a new trick. We always do. That night, as they were getting ready for bed, Agent Rivera called with news that made everyone gather in the kitchen. Brennan's talking, she said, trying to make a deal. He's giving up names, dates, everything. Good, Miguel said fiercely. There's more. He admitted to ordering the dogs killed because Torres had told him about the hidden evidence, but not where it was. He knew one of the dogs had it, but not which one. So he was going to kill them all, Frank said, disgusted. Yes, but here's the thing. He says there's more evidence. Something Torres hid separately, something about a bigger operation, not just local, interstate, maybe international. Where? Chen asked. He doesn't know, but he says Torres told him it was somewhere close to his heart. Everyone looked at Miguel, who was frowning in concentration. Dad's heart, he said slowly. He always said his heart was in 2 places, with me and with his dogs. Rex suddenly stood, moving to Miguel's backpack, the one from his foster home. He nosed it insistently, whining, What is it, boy? Miguel opened the backpack, dumping out clothes and books. At the bottom was something Ethan hadn't seen before, a small stuffed German shepherd toy, worn and obviously well-loved. Dad gave me this when I was little, Miguel said, when he first started working with Rex. He said it would keep me safe when he couldn't be there. Rex nosed the toy urgently, his tail wagging. Miguel examined it more carefully, feeling along the seams. There, a small, hard lump in the stuffing. There's something inside, he breathed. Rivera was already on her way, but Miguel couldn't wait. With shaking hands, he carefully opened a seam. Inside the stuffing was a flash drive, smaller than his thumb. Dad, he whispered, you clever, clever man. The flash drive contained everything. Bank records, shipping manifests, coded communications between criminal organizations across 3 states. Torres had been building a RICO case that would take down not just Brennan's crew, but an entire network. This is huge, Rivera said when she arrived. This is career case huge. Torres was working alone because he didn't know who to trust, but he documented everything. Will it be enough, Sarah asked, to keep them all in prison? Life sentences. All of them. Rivera looked at Miguel with something approaching awe. Your father was one of the smartest cops I've ever seen. He protected this evidence with the 2 things he knew no one would think to check, his dogs and his son's toy. He protected us even after he was gone, Miguel said quietly. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The grand jury hearings, where Rex did indeed demonstrate his training, identifying Brennan and his associates from lineup photos with perfect accuracy. The media coverage, which the family tried to avoid but couldn't entirely escape. The adoption process for Miguel, which went through with unprecedented speed thanks to Rivera pulling strings and public support. Through it all, the dogs were their anchor. Rex never left Miguel's side except when required for court. Luna recovered fully and proved to be an excellent mother. Scout's wounds healed, leaving scars but no permanent damage. Shadow came out of his shell, becoming Ethan's constant companion. The custody battle over the dogs that Chen had warned about never materialized. The public outcry at the suggestion of separating the hero dogs from the hero family was so intense that the department quietly dropped any claim. Ruth's lawyer contacts helped make it official. The dogs were retired from service and legally belonged to the Miller-Torres family. Yes, Miller-Torres. Sarah had suggested it, and Miguel had cried. You don't have to do that, he'd said. Family shares names, Frank had said firmly. Your family. One evening, about 2 months after that first rainy night, the whole family sat on Ruth's porch watching the sunset. The 4 remaining puppies, now getting big and rowdy, played in the yard. The adult dogs lounged nearby, finally relaxed and safe. We need our own place, Sarah said. We can't impose on Ruth forever. Actually, Ruth said, I've been thinking about that. This farm is too big for one old woman. The east section has a house that just needs fixing up. If you wanted to stay, we couldn't afford, Sarah started. I'm not talking about buying. I'm talking about family. You've become my family these past months. The farm needs life on it again. It needs children and dogs and chaos. Ruth, Frank said, his voice rough, that's too generous. It's not generous, it's selfish, Ruth said firmly. Do you know how lonely I was before you all crashed into my life? Now I have grandchildren to spoil, dogs to pet, and people to cook for. You'd be doing me a favor. Ethan and Miguel looked at each other, then at the adults, hope shining in their eyes. Can we? Miguel asked. Can we stay? Sarah looked at Frank, who nodded. If Ruth is sure. I've never been more sure of anything, Ruth said. The boys whooped, the dogs barked, and the puppies ran in circles, sensing the joy in the air. There's something else, Rivera said. She'd stop by for dinner, as she often did now, having become part of their extended family. The DEA wants to create a new K9 training program, specifically for detecting the new synthetic drugs that are flooding the market. They want experienced handlers and trainers. She looked at Miguel and Ethan. They want you two to be part of it. Not now, when you're older, but they want to sponsor your education. Make sure you're ready if you choose that path. Together? Ethan asked. Together. They've seen what you can do with these dogs. Your gift, Ethan, and your training, Miguel, it's a combination they've never seen before. The boys looked at each other, then at the dogs. What do you think, Rex? Miguel asked. Want to teach other dogs how to be heroes? Rex barked once, his tail wagging. I think that's a yes, Ethan laughed. As night fell and they all moved inside for dinner, a chaotic affair with 12 people, Ruth had invited some neighbors and 11 dogs. Sarah found herself standing in the doorway, watching her expanded family. David would have loved this, she thought. The noise, the chaos, the love that filled every corner of the space. He would be proud, Frank said quietly beside her, knowing where her thoughts had gone. Of Ethan? Of all of us. We took something terrible. Losing him, Torres's murder, the dog's abandonment, and we made something beautiful from it. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes, but a smile on her face. From inside, Ethan's voice called out, Mom? Miguel taught Scout to bring the TV remote. Come see? She laughed, wiping her eyes. Coming! As she walked in, she saw them all. Her father-in-law finally free from the isolation his PTSD had caused, her son bright and alive again. Miguel finding joy after unimaginable loss, the dogs healthy and happy. Even the puppies tumbling over each other in their pen. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not planned, but absolutely right. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan couldn't sleep. He padded quietly to the kitchen for water and found Miguel already there, sitting at the table with Rex's head in his lap. Couldn't sleep either? Ethan asked. I was thinking about my dad. How he would have loved seeing Rex happy like this. Safe. Ethan sat down across from him. He knows? Somehow, I think he knows. You really believe that? That people who die can still see us? I know it, Ethan said, with the certainty only a 5-year-old could have. My dad told me before he died that love doesn't end. It just changes shape. Like how water becomes ice or steam, but it's still water. Miguel smiled slightly. Your dad sounds like he was smart too. All dads are smart about love, Ethan said. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Miguel asked, Do you think we'll really do it? Become K9 trainers when we grow up? I think we'll do something important, Ethan said. Something that helps animals and people. Together. Brothers, Miguel said. Brothers, Ethan agreed. Rex's tail thumped against the floor, and Shadow padded in to join them, followed by Luna and Scout. Soon all 4 dogs were gathered around the boys, a protective circle of fur and loyalty. They're telling us to go back to bed, Ethan said, laughing as Scout nudged his hand. Yeah, Rex is giving me the look, Miguel agreed. They stood to go back to their room, but Ethan paused at the doorway. Miguel? I'm glad the bad things happened. Miguel looked shocked. What? Not the bad things themselves. But I'm glad they led to this. To you being my brother. To having the dogs. To our big weird family. Sometimes bad things lead to good things, you know? Miguel thought about it, then nodded. Yeah, I know. As they climbed back into their beds, Rex settling between them on the floor, Shadow curled at Ethan's feet. Ethan whispered into the darkness, "Thanks, Dad, for helping me hear them that day." And somewhere in the gentle snoring of dogs and the quiet breathing of his brother, Ethan could have sworn he heard his father's voice. "You heard them yourself, son. I just made sure you were brave enough to listen." The story of the Miller-Torres family spread far beyond their small town. News outlets picked it up. Social media shared it millions of times, and letters poured in from around the world. People who had lost hope found it again in the story of a small boy who heard the cries others ignored, of dogs who carried justice in their collars, of families formed not by blood, but by choice and courage. But for Ethan and Miguel, Rex and Luna, Scout and Shadow, and all their puppies, fame wasn't the point. They had found something more valuable than recognition. They had found each other. 6 months later, at the trial that would send Brennan and his associates to prison for life, the prosecutor asked Miguel to explain why the dog's testimony mattered. Miguel stood, Rex beside him, and spoke clearly. Because they remember the truth even when humans lie. Because they stay loyal even when humans betray. And because sometimes the smallest voice, or bark, can bring down the biggest evil. The courtroom erupted in applause, and the judge didn't even call for order. That night, back at the farm, they celebrated quietly. No media, no strangers, just family. The remaining puppies, now almost full-grown, played with the neighbor kids who'd come to visit. Ruth had made her famous pot roast. Frank and Marcus swapped war stories. Sarah and Chen discussed the new pediatric therapy dog program they were starting at the hospital, using Luna's puppies. And Ethan and Miguel sat on the porch with their 4 heroes, watching the stars come out. "We did it," Miguel said. "We actually did it. Dad's killers are going to jail forever." "We all did it," Ethan corrected. "Even the puppies helped by being so cute that everyone paid attention to our story." Miguel laughed, a real deep laugh that had been rare, but was becoming more common. "What now?" he asked. Ethan thought about it. "Now we grow up. We learn everything we can about dogs and training and helping people. And maybe someday we'll save other dogs like we saved ours. And other kids," Miguel added. "Kids who lost their parents like we did." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "We'll help them too." Rex barked once, as if in agreement, and all 4 dogs gathered closer to their boys. Inside the house, Sarah watched through the window, her heart full. She thought about David, about Torres, about all the loss that had led to this moment. And she realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the darkest paper. "Thank you," she whispered to both men, wherever they were. "Thank you for bringing us together." The wind chimed through the trees, and for just a moment, she could have sworn she heard 2 voices on the breeze, saying in unison, "Take care of them." "Always," she promised. "Always." As the night deepened and the family slowly made their way to bed, Ethan made one last check on all the dogs. Each one was safe, comfortable, loved. The puppies were piled together in a furry heap. The adult dogs were in their favorite spots, Rex by Miguel's bed, Shadow by Ethan's, Luna near her puppies, Scout by the door, ever the guardian. "Good night, everyone," Ethan whispered. "Thank you for choosing us." And in the darkness, 11 tails wagged in response. The next morning brought a surprise. A letter arrived, official-looking, addressed to both boys. Inside was an invitation from the National Canine Officers Association. They wanted to present Ethan and Miguel with a special award, the Young Heroes Medal, for their role in saving the dogs and solving Torres's murder. But more importantly, the letter contained something else. A scholarship fund had been established in Officer Torres's name, specifically for children who showed exceptional ability in working with animals. The first 2 recipients, Ethan Miller Torres and Miguel Miller Torres. "This means we can really do it," Miguel said, eyes wide. "We can become the best K9 trainers in the world." "Together," Ethan said. "Together," Miguel agreed. They looked at the dogs, who seemed to understand something important had happened. Rex barked, then Scout, then Luna and Shadow. Soon all the dogs were barking, even the puppies, a joyful chorus that brought everyone running. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, alarmed. "They're celebrating," Ethan said, laughing. "They know we're going to help other dogs like them." "And other kids like us," Miguel added. Frank looked at the letter, then at his grandsons, both of them his grandsons now, and felt something he hadn't felt since coming back from Vietnam. Pure, uncomplicated pride. "You boys are going to change the world," he said. "No," Ethan said, wise beyond his years. "We're just going to listen to it." Sometimes that's all the world needs, someone to really listen. As if in agreement, Rex patted over and placed his big head against Ethan's small hand. And in that touch, in that moment, everyone in the room understood a fundamental truth. Love speaks a language that needs no words, only an open heart willing to hear it. The local news picked up the story of the scholarship, and soon donations poured in from across the country. People who had followed the story wanted to contribute, to be part of something good in a world that often seemed so dark. Within a month, the fund had enough money to sponsor 10 kids. Within 6 months, it was a full program, partnering with K-9 units across the state to match gifted young people with retired police dogs who needed homes. Ethan and Miguel became the face of the program, visiting schools with Rex and Shadow. Luna stayed home with her puppies, and Scout had earned his rest. They told their story, but more importantly, they showed other kids that connection with animals wasn't something to be ashamed of or hide. It was a gift to be celebrated and developed. One day, at a particularly large school assembly, a small girl in the back raised her hand. "I can hear what animals say too," she said quietly. "But everyone says I'm making it up." Ethan walked through the crowd to her, Shadow at his side. He knelt down to her level, just as Officer Chen had once knelt to his. "You're not making it up," he said firmly. "Some people just listen with different ears. What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered. "Well, Emma, Shadow here says you have a cat at home who's been trying to tell you something important." "Something about being sick?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Mittens has been acting weird. Mom says he's fine, but trust what you hear," Ethan said. "Animals don't lie." Later, Emma's mother would call to say that, thanks to Ethan's advice, they'd taken Mittens to the vet and discovered early-stage kidney disease, treatable because they caught it in time. These moments multiplied. Everywhere Ethan and Miguel went, they found other children with the gift, other families formed by tragedy and reformed by love, other dogs who needed someone to hear their silent cries for help. Years passed. The boys grew. The puppies found their homes, but stayed connected to the family. Scout eventually passed, peacefully, surrounded by all of them, and they buried him on the farm with full honors. Luna lived to the remarkable age of 15, seeing her puppies have puppies of their own. Shadow became a certified therapy dog, visiting hospitals with Ethan. And Rex lived to see Miguel graduate from the police academy, standing proud as his boy, now a man, received his badge. At Miguel's graduation, the chief of police asked him to speak. Miguel stood at the podium, 22 years old now, tall and strong, but still with those same knowing eyes. 15 years ago, my father died trying to stop corruption in this very department. His dogs were left to die, and I was left alone. But a 5-year-old boy heard their cries and saved them. That boy became my brother. His family became my family. And together, we learned that the worst moments of our lives can become the foundations for our greatest purposes. He looked at Ethan, now 20, who was in his second year of veterinary school with a specialization in K-9 behavior. We made a promise to each other and to those dogs that we would dedicate our lives to making sure no dog would be abandoned, no child would be alone, and no corruption would go unpunished. Today, I keep the first part of that promise. Tomorrow, we keep fighting for the rest. The crowd erupted in applause. Rex, now elderly but still regal, barked once, his approval clear. After the ceremony, the family gathered, Sarah and Frank, both gray-haired now, but still strong. Ruth, in a wheelchair, but sharp as ever. Chen, now a captain. Rivera, now head of the regional FBI office. Marcus and his family, Jenny and Doctor. Nathan, who had married and started their own animal rescue. And dozens of others whose lives had been touched by that rainy night when a boy heard dogs crying in an abandoned bus. "You did it, Dad," Miguel whispered to the sky. "We did it." "He knows," Ethan said, putting an arm around his brother's shoulders. "They both know." And perhaps they did. Perhaps David Miller and James Torres were there in spirit, watching their sons stand tall, surrounded by the family that tragedy had created and love had sustained. The story could end here, with triumph and graduation and promises kept. But life, like love, doesn't end. It transforms. 3 months after Miguel's graduation, a call came in. 4 German shepherds had been found locked in a shipping container at the docks, part of a dog fighting ring the FBI had just busted. The dogs were traumatized, aggressive, considered irredeemable. "We'll take them," Ethan said without hesitation. "All 4?" the agent asked, surprised. "It's kind of our thing," Miguel said, already grabbing his keys. They arrived at the docks to find a scene eerily similar to that night 15 years ago. Scared dogs, chained and abandoned, left to die. But this time, Ethan and Miguel weren't children. They were trained, prepared, and backed by years of experience. "Hey there," Ethan said softly to the largest dog, a male with scars across his muzzle. "We're here to help. I know you're scared. I know humans have hurt you. But we're different. We listen." The dog growled, but there was something in his eyes, not just aggression, but pain, fear, hope, barely alive, but still flickering. "Take your time," Miguel said, settling down just outside the dog's reach. "We've got all the time in the world." It took 3 hours, but eventually, the scarred male crept forward, sniffing Miguel's outstretched hand. The moment he made contact, his whole body began to shake, not with fear, but with relief. "That's it," Ethan whispered. "You're safe now. You're all safe." They brought the 4 new dogs back to the farm, where Rex, despite his age, immediately took them under his protection, showing them that not all humans were bad, that some could be trusted, that love was possible even after trauma. Watching Rex work with the traumatized dogs, Ethan had a revelation. "This is it," he told Miguel. "This is what we're supposed to do. Not just train K9 units, but rehabilitate the ones who've been broken. Give them second chances." "Like we got," Miguel said, understanding immediately. Within a year, they had officially established the Torres Miller Rehabilitation Center for traumatized K9s. It started small, just the barn on Ruth's farm, but word spread. Police departments with dogs too damaged for service sent them. Rescue organizations with unadoptable dogs brought them. Even military units with PTSD, affected war dogs, sought their help. And the miracle was, it worked. Not every time, not with every dog, but often enough that hope became expectation, and expectation became reality. Dogs that experts said would never trust again learned to play. Dogs that had only known violence learned gentleness. Dogs that had forgotten how to be. Dogs remembered, with help from Rex and his pack. The program grew. They hired staff, expanded facilities, developed new techniques that combined Ethan's intuitive understanding with Miguel's disciplined training methods. Veterinary schools sent students to learn. Police departments sent handlers to train. What had started with 2 boys and 4 abandoned dogs became a nationally recognized center for canine rehabilitation. But at its heart, it remained what it had always been. A family bound not by blood, but by choice, by courage, and by the understanding that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the world. On the 15th anniversary of that rainy night, they held a celebration at the farm. Hundreds came, families who had adopted rehabilitated dogs, officers whose K9 partners had been saved by the program, children who had discovered their own gifts through Ethan and Miguel's school visits. Sarah stood on the porch, watching it all, and Frank, using a walker now but still spry, stood beside her. "David would be so proud," she said. "He is proud," Frank corrected. "Wherever he is, he's proud." Ruth, 93 and still sharp, sat in her wheelchair surrounded by puppies from the latest rescue, laughing as they climbed all over her. "Best decision I ever made," she said to anyone who would listen, "letting this crazy family invade my farm." As the sun set, Ethan and Miguel stood together where they had buried Scout, then Luna, and finally, just 6 months ago, Rex, who had lived to the extraordinary age of 17, long enough to see his boys become the men he always knew they could be. "Think they know?" Miguel asked. "The ones we've lost? Think they know what they started?" Ethan knelt, placing his hand on Rex's headstone. Immediately he felt it, warm, loving, proud. Not words exactly, but understanding. the same feeling he got sometimes when he helped a particularly damaged dog find trust again. "They know," he said with certainty, "and they're still helping. Every dog we save, every child we teach, every family we bring together, they're part of it." A bark made them turn. The latest rescue, a German Shepherd puppy who'd been found in conditions too terrible to describe, was playing with a little girl who just discovered she could hear animals. The girl was laughing, the puppy was wagging its entire body, and watching them, Ethan saw the cycle beginning again. "Come on," Miguel said, pulling Ethan to his feet. "Party's not over, and Mom's threatening to tell embarrassing stories about us." "She wouldn't dare," Ethan laughed. "She absolutely would." They walked back to the celebration together, brothers in every way that mattered, surrounded by the legacy of love that had grown from one rainy night's decision to listen to a cry for help. As the stars came out, the dogs began to sing, not barking, but a harmonious howling that rose and fell like music. All of them, from the oldest rescue to the youngest puppy, voices joining in a chorus that spoke of survival, of hope, of families found in the most unexpected places. And in that song, those who listened, really listened, could hear the truth that Ethan had always known. Love speaks in many languages, but compassion needs no translation. The story of the 4 German shepherds found in a broken bus had become legend, but more than that, it had become a beacon. It reminded people that heroes come in all sizes, that families are made not just born, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to care when it would be easier to walk away. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below about where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more incredible tales of hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Remember, somewhere out there, an animal might be waiting for someone just like you to hear their call for help. Will you listen?